Okay, so we were reading Sugar Hill. Um, and we left off, and Flambe had been, not Flambe, Ben had started sinking into some quicksand. So we're going to figure out, I mean, and not only that, they were hearing drums, and that meant that the natives, who they called the Arawaks, were nearby, but it was dangerous. They said that if the drums stopped, then that was really dangerous. That was a really dangerous situation for them. But the drums stopped. And so now they're like in danger. And not only that, Ben is sinking into quicksand. Oh my gosh. What's going to happen? So he said, I've got it. Now please get me out of here. Flambe and Marie pulled on the bamboo pole until they thought their arms would be yanked from their sockets. They succeeded in pulling Ben a few inches. "Oh God," he cried. "Oh God, don't let me die." The mud was up to his chin, and he was gasping for air. In his fight, he let go of the bamboo. "Please, no. Let—" The mud began filling his mouth and nostrils. Marie fell to her knees and began to scream and tear at her hair as Ben's head disappeared beneath the surface of the mud. Several large bubbles appeared, and then there was nothing. Flambe pulled Marie roughly to her feet. "Come on," he said. "There's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that can be done." A bright-colored spear missed Flambe by inches as he bent to help Marie to her feet. "Come on." Marie allowed herself to be dragged through the swamp. Numb with fear, she was aware of only one thing. She had just witnessed the death of a man who perhaps loved her, might even have married her. Tears stung her eyes as she ran. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she followed Flambe through the underbrush. Several more spears landed uncomfortably near them. "Run, Zigzag, run!" panted Flambe. "The tips of the spears are poisoned." The swamp ended abruptly, and another mountain range, not as high as the first one, loomed before them. A path of sorts led up, and they climbed until they reached the narrow plateau. "Let's stop here," gasped Flambe. The donkey fell over on its side, its tongue hanging out and its nostrils distended. It fought to fill its lungs with air. They were about 15 feet above the floor of the swamp. Flambe began moving stones to the edge of the plateau, both for protection from the flying spears and as possible weapons. "Marie, help me. Pile as many stones as you can across the front and build a fortress against those sons of bees." He said the bad word. Marie scurried about on her knees, gathering rocks until her hands bled, leaving prints of blood on their gray surfaces. "Oh God," she cried, "if only we were able to save Ben." "Let's worry about saving ourselves." They worked feverishly for nearly an hour. Not that they know, because who has a watch? At the end of that time, they had fortressed themselves against any onslaught. Flambe crawled to the side of the donkey and lifted the earthenware pot, which miraculously had not been broken. "Here, here's, here, there's water inside. Drink." Marie, forgetting that the pot had held bat excrement, oh, sorry, forgetting that the pot had held bat excrement. Gotta find it. Drank from the pot while Flambe held it for her. When she finished, he drank too. What are we going to do, Flambe? She wailed. They're down there. Do? We'll fight them if we have to. But where are they? Why aren't the drums beating? They're down there somewhere, my dear. And they aren't interested in playing for our amusement anymore. Marie leaned against the side of the pile of rocks, closed her eyes in exhaustion, and muttered over and over again, "Oh, Ben, oh, Ben." "You'd best forget about Ben, my dear. He's dead. He can't do you any good." Marie opened her eyes. "What do you mean by that?" "Really?" Um, I'm your only hope, Marie, and it's a slim hope at that. So you'd better fix your starry eyes on me and forget about Benjamin Wyatt. I know you had your cap set for him, and from what I could see, he wasn't adverse to it, even if you are a prostitute that starts with the W. But I tell you, Marie, he couldn't have done half as much for you as what I'm going to do. Uh-oh, what's that mean? What do you mean, Flambe? Of course, you knew that was coming because that's all she does is ask. What do you mean? She asked. His eyes shone with twin fires as his face split into a twisted grin. Can you trust him? Then he crawled towards her. Marie quickly realized what was on the pirate's mind, and I guess that's what he can do for her. Good God, man, do you realize the situation we're in? I might as well die pleasuring a beautiful woman, Marie. God. Marie wasn't sure whether or not he was mocking her. She touched her long blonde hair self-consciously. It was caked with dried mud. Flambe lifted her skirts and climbed on top of her. Marie closed her eyes and endured it. Oddly enough, the act of sex gave her comfort, probably because that's what she did, for survival. It was a release from the terrible tension she had gone through. Soon, she too was caught up in the throes of violent passion and responded with the lack of inhibition bordering on gluttony. Mm, must have been good. Back and forth they rocked against the rough surface of the plateau until at last expended, they lay entwined, panting and sweating, each unwilling to let go of the other for fear that if they did, they would certainly perish. The brief comfort they had found in one another was shattered as spears struck the concave rock formation just above them. Flambe pulled away from Marie. The young woman shrieked as the spears dashed against the rocks and clattered above them. Flambe quickly closed his breeches, that's what they call pants, and scrambled to the short wall of rocks they had recently built. Below, a group of 24 natives were dancing and shouting. Flambe was astounded by their appearance. It was as if time had passed by them. They were obviously the descendants of the Arawaks, who had been all but exterminated by the Spaniards during the late 16th century. With their horses, spears, and lances, the Spaniards had entered the towns and villages, sparing neither children, nor old men, nor pregnant women. They ripped open stomachs, wagering as to who could disembowel the quickest. They took little children by the heels and crushed their heads against the cliffs. They also built gibbets? I don't know what that is. Each one able to accommodate 13 bodies in honor of the Savior and his disciples. Upon these gibbets, they slowly burned the Arawaks alive. That's crazy. Except for those who had escaped to the mountains, the Arawak Indian was exterminated by the Spanish invaders. Those who were left told and retold tales of the white man's cruelty. The tribe's hatred for the white man remained passionate. The remaining Arawaks took great pleasure in hunting and killing those white people unfortunate enough to wander into the interior of Jamaica. The natives caught sight of Flambe. His red hair and beard blazed in the sunlight, and they stopped shouting. They jabbered excitedly among themselves and pointed at him. Quiet for a moment, they then began shifting their weight, moving their bodies slowly from side to side. Uh, ooh, I never heard this word before. A susurrating sound came from the bracelets fashioned of bones and shells tied around each ankle and wrist. It was a strange, eerie sound and caused the hairs on the back of Flambe's neck to stand on end. Marie, who was lying on her side, clutched him around his thighs. "What are they doing?" she asked. "Shh! They're trying to spook us." Then he added to himself, "And they're doing a fine job." One native, tall, regal, and more decorated than the others, broke the rhythm. He stepped forward. He held the clawed feet of some giant bird in his hand. He dug at the air with the sharp claws, threw back his head, and in a high-pitched voice spewed forth a babble of words. Flambe didn't understand. The pirate frowned. He knew most of the island dialects, but not this one. However, the meaning of the words was unmistakable. "Get ready to heave the rocks," he shouted to Marie as he pulled himself free of her. Marie scrambled to her knees and peered over the edge. She sucked in her breath as she faced her enemy. For the first time, "God in heaven, he ain't going to help us. Woman," she said, "God in heaven." And Flambe said, "He ain't going to help us, woman. Now push those rocks and push like it's your last act on earth, 'cause it's most likely going to be." In an unexpected gesture of emotion, Flambe caught Marie's hand in his and squeezed it. The native, who was apparently the chief, shot his sinewy arms up in the air, and he crossed the bird's feet into an X. The other natives jumped up and down and cheered. Not a cheer of joy, but a cry for vengeance. The natives rushed up the mountainside, their eyes filled with blood. The pirate screamed, "Push!" He shoved with his shoulders against the stack of rocks, and they began to move. The rocks groaned as they edged towards the edge of the plateau. The natives, halfway up the hill, looked up in horror as the heavy stones teetered on the precipice. Then the wall collapsed, and the rocks began tumbling down the side. They bounced and hit the natives' heads crushing their skulls and breaking their bones. The leader was knocked backwards and fell on the ground, pinned fast by a large wedge-shaped rock that had struck him in the side and snapped his ribs like twigs. He groaned in agony and stared up as the entire side of the mountain began to shake. Flambe grabbed Marie and pulled her under to protect the protective lip of the concave. Landslide! Cover your head with your arms! They huddled together as the mountain shuddered. The top of it seemed to explode. Dirt, rock, and trees broke loose and tumbled down. A solid sheet of debris poured past Marie and Flambe, not 2 yards from where they were flattened and protected. A roaring sound continued for more than 20 minutes, then stopped abruptly, except for the sifting of dirt and an occasional falling stone. All was quiet. And I'm going to stop it right there. And this is the end of part 3, or chapter 3. And we only have really a page and a half to finish chapter 3. So I'll continue again later.